So I wanted to have you guys on. You've been both now, I mean, Eric for 11 years, Jodi for over 5 in Las Vegas. This outside of Indianapolis, it's been our oldest market, and you guys have been such a huge part of it. And there's a number of husband-wife teams across the country with us. And I know, and there's so many more. It's amazing how often it seems like I'm talking to an agent that's talking about having their spouse maybe get their license and join. And of course, you guys went through that. And, I put in the email letting everybody know about this. You guys last year combined did about 15 million. And I'm not sure what your goal is for 2020. And obviously the pandemic might have thrown a wrench into that a little bit, but, kind of talk a little bit about where you've come from and where you're going. And so, Eric, starting back in 2009, you were working with a home builder, I believe America West, and heard about us through maybe Michelle Yoon. I don't remember what the connection was, but how'd you get hooked up with us back in
2009? My sales partner at American West was married to Ryan.
Oh, that's right.
And he was busy. And in 2007, 2008, I was not. I might see one person in the model a day, and I was bored out of my mind and didn't get into real estate to not sell real estate. So when I decided to make a change and go into general, I had Ryan's
Deb.
Yeah. I talked to her a little bit. She had me talk to Ryan. Ryan put me in touch with Chip, and there you go. I've been busy ever since.
The rest is history, as they say. I want to come back to Ryan a little bit because there's some interesting stuff with him having been out there and then leaving, and leads you've done an amazing job with. But then Jodi, so you obviously knew Eric and then got married. And then at what point did you decide you were going to join forces?
Well, I had actually done real estate in Arizona. I lived here for 15 years, moved away, moved back. But in Arizona, I was only selling new. I worked with a couple who just gave me referrals, and it was all new homes. So when I moved back here, the market was not great still, and I was a single parent. So I was a little hesitant to get back into it, but Eric kept working on me. So I ended up quitting my job and getting back into it. So it was a little bit different because I hadn't done resale. So I learned a lot. But I think the nicest thing for me was to have somebody, probably drove him crazy, but somebody there all the time that I could ask questions for the first year.
Yeah.
Because
were you selling new in Arizona?
Yeah, it's just new.
Well, and so she was a realtor. She just specialized in new.
I was a realtor. This couple was advertising, and they used to have new home magazines in the grocery stores. So they would advertise in there, and then they were getting busy and wanted to retire. So they would refer me the business. So then I would just show new homes. So,
well, that's really similar to story too, as a company.
That's why I had that new home. I guess I like selling new homes too, because I had that experience.
So, one thing I wanted to kind of get into a little bit with you guys, and I'm not sure if it's as crazy as it ever has been at the peak in Las Vegas, but Las Vegas has always been an extreme market compared to Indianapolis, which is pretty vanilla. It's the opposite. So, right now, how much are you struggling with multiple offer situations and getting offers accepted with your buyers? That's a real problem for many of us across the country right now, maybe worse than ever. I don't think it's the worst it's ever been in Vegas, but how bad is it right now for you guys finding inventory for your home buyers?
Well, since COVID, we kind of switched how we work as a team. So Eric's the one that's doing the showings, more the showings and then negotiations. And I'm taking the leads and fielding them and screening them and all that. But I think I can answer on the seller side just because I had a listing and it was on the market for less than a day, and we had 12 showings, accepted an offer, they fell out, put it back on the market, had 5 more offers, multiple offers again, sold above list price, waived appraisal. So I'm sure Eric can talk about the buyers, but on the seller side, it's great if you're a listing agent, but a struggle for the buyers. And I feel bad for, I don't want to call anybody, these FHA people that drive over from California, have to call the realtor and tell them, sorry, we took another offer. So I can only imagine how many they're submitting.
Oh, it's painful. Eric, what's a crazy story what's maybe the craziest story of multiple offer situations where you've had to get a buyer a deal?
Jeez. I don't know that I've had any crazy story. What, Jodi?
So there's so many.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I have any crazy stories. I mean, even during COVID, I sold a house in Summerlin, and it was in the fives, and it was a little overpriced. And we told them, you know, hey, we think, you know, this is where the comps are showing, and put in an offer, you know, a bit below where the seller wanted to go with it. And, you know, the appraisal came in, we negotiated up a little higher. Appraisal came in, we're about 20,000 different between the sales price and where they wanted. And my clients just said, we like the house enough. There's not a lot of inventory. You know, we had that discussion. You know, if we go back on the market, there's nothing that says we're going to find a house where we don't have a similar situation. And they like the house enough. They paid over list. We negotiated something in the middle. I took some people out last week. They want a single story under 250. Luckily they're willing to look in the north, which is good, because that's where most of that is. But I mean, one house sold in a day, one house sold in 3 days with over 5 offers, and another one similar. So, you know, they're like, what's going on? We thought things would be, you know, this is kind of crazy. And I just kind of had to go through with them and, you know, talk to them about where the inventory was. And, you know, even though demand is slowed down some, it seems like it's kind of boomeranging back. You know, we had a little bit of a lull for maybe 3 weeks, a month. And the things starting to open back up. You know, you see videos of people going to the beach and going to the casinos, obviously not the beach in Las Vegas. I just mean, as states are opening back up, people are just rushing back out. And it seems like that's happening, at least in the lower price ranges here right now.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I think that like on the multiple offers, we got a letter from the buyer, and my seller originally chose, it was the highest offer, but he mentioned multiple times that he was very impressed by this letter that the family wrote. So I still think that that's a good thing if people are out doing that. And the other thing is, I think it was Chip that mentioned it a while ago, is to put in a backup offer, because I know when you get multiple offers, I tried to go back to everybody the second time, but I might have missed somebody. So if you have somebody that submits a backup offer in a multiple offer situation, you have it right there. You can go right back to them as the listing agent. It makes it easy. So that's what you want to do for your buyers, is make it easy for the listing agent to pick you if the first deal falls out.
Yeah, no question. It's any particular advice you guys would have for newer agents and that are in this type of environment, and how you go about setting expectations with the buyer? That you may have to pay over list. Some people are like, why would I pay more than what they're asking for? Any advice you guys would have on getting, you know, setting the expectations?
Some people just need to learn from losing a couple deals. So some people, you can set the expectations, and I have a buyer listing presentation, and you can go through the market data. Eric had a client that he took out a couple weeks ago, that's an engineer, so they're very detailed. You know, I don't want to say anything negative, but
Spreadsheet, very spreadsheet,
yeah.
very numbers.
So he didn't want to have the buyer presentation, canceled that part of it, said, let's just meet at the house. So he did it. But after he lost out, Eric said, you know, this is what I tried to explain to you. This is why I wanted to have a sit down meeting with you. So I don't know, you can try to do it. Some people won't let you do it. So you just have to, they're the people that have to lose it multiple times to understand the market. But I think the biggest challenge in Vegas is people don't understand our market. They think that we still have a ton of foreclosures. I'm still getting calls for that. They think that we have a ton of land here. They think our prices are cheaper than they are. So I think those are the 3 things that we battle constantly.
Yeah, Eric, anything to add on that setting expectation part?
I'm not too pushy to try to get people to sit down before I try to get them. I say, hey, let's meet and let's go through a few things. Most of the time people don't want to do that. So, but I've been doing it long enough that I just kind of work all that data in as we're walking around looking at houses. You know, people I see, sometimes you see somebody walk through a house and they're showing a house, and like, there's the kitchen, there's the bedroom. It's like, they've got eyes, they can see. I try to point out stuff that's unique about the house, but while I'm walking through the house, I'm taking that opportunity to talk about, you know, especially when someone's really nice and they start showing interest in it, then I start kind of going, okay, you know, we've been out for 2 days. We've looked at 16 houses. This is the only one you like. That's happening to lots of people, you know, that are out looking at houses. This is going to be, you know, and then I start talking about inventory and demand and what's happening with prices and all those kind of things. And, you know, sometimes they're listing, sometimes they're not. Even when they're listing, sometimes they decide to do what they want to do, and I tell them that. I'm like, look, I'll do what you want to do, but I want you to understand what's going on so that if we don't get the house, you're not surprised by it or you're not upset by it. And then, hopefully we get farther enough along with the process that when they put in an offer, if they do lose it, I've already told them what was going to happen. Like, this is probably what's going to happen.
Right.
Probably going to be multiple offers. There's a chance they might want, above list. And then inevitably when that happens, then maybe the next time they're more willing to listen, because you're like, look, sometimes it takes 2, 3, 4 times. You're like, okay, we've done this now on this house. And I always go back and remind them. I'm like, we had this to a talk. We decided to do this. It didn't work. We went through this next house. We decided to do this. It didn't work. I mean, I've had people at a certain point where I'm finally like, okay, it's time to do it my way. I mean, or not, but I can't,
Right.
I'm not going to keep, but that's usually a long way down the road. But
Even
you build up a relationship with them over time. And after you lose a few, you can finally say, are you ready to buy a house yet?
Right.
You can joke around with them. But the other struggle is we have a lot of VA buyers that we've been working with. And sometimes the lenders will be like, yes, you should ask for closing costs. They're out of state. They don't know our market.
Right.
So it takes a while for Eric to try to get through to these VA people. Like, we're not going to be able to do this. Or if we are, it's going to be minimal. We just had a deal where they literally had no money. And we said, you're going to have to save, in the next month before you close, because they're not going to give you all the closing costs. And one thing that I think we found kind of by accident, Eric and I, that really seems to help is to tell people that want closing costs, look, I don't know if you're aware, the seller also has closing costs. So you're asking the seller to pay 5 to 6% of their closing costs, and then another 3% of yours. When we say that to them, it's like, oh, like they just don't realize that they think the seller has no closing costs, so why shouldn't they pay ours? So when Eric tells them that, or I tell them that, it's made a huge, huge difference. I think, I don't know, maybe Eric, you don't think so, but I think it's made a difference.
If they don't have any money, they don't have any money. You
Right.
have to do what you can. But when they have some, and it's like, look, maybe even if we just ask for half, at least you're not asking for everything, because if you're asking for everything from a seller, sometimes they're like, maybe they shouldn't be buying a house.
Well, how hard has it been to even get a VA buyer an accepted offer right now?
Eric's got a couple.
Yeah,
That's good.
We just closed one, but the appraisal came in low, and then the seller had to, one thing that we did too is the seller had to agree to come down on the appraisal, but also still give us half of closing costs because the buyer just didn't have it. And what I said to their agent was, look, I know that your buyer doesn't, or your seller doesn't want to do this, and they wanted a higher amount, but this appraisal is going to stick with them. And that there's a lot of military buyers out right now, because they're ones that have the job and they have a steady job, a steady income. There's no concern about them not having an income. So that's a lot of the buyers out there. So if your seller puts it back on the market, they're probably going to have another VA buyer and go through the same situation. Don't you want to just move forward here? And so luckily he was able to convince the seller, but I wasn't sure on that one if they would.
And we'll have to see how it goes now that things are opening back up. The handful of deals we did that were VA that we got done during COVID, we could use that. Hey, look, we know it's not ideal, but he's active duty. He's not going anywhere, he or she. They're going to close. So if you're not willing to help out with closing costs, then you may end up with a buyer that looks better on paper that ends up losing their job or can't close. So it'll be interesting the next few weeks to see what happens, because I've got 3 or 4 VA buyers, and now that things are opening back up, it could get more challenging. I got a new lead yesterday, and I just said, look, I said, what did the lender tell you about closing costs? And they said, well, that we should ask for them. And I said, well, they're a national lender. They're not here in Vegas. And I just went through, I said, I'm going to be brutally honest with you. Here's what we're looking at. I'm not saying we can't ask for some for you, but while we're doing this, be saving as much as you can, because if you find a house that you really like and you ask for all your closing costs, it's going to be a tough hill to climb.
With you guys and Eric going all the way back, when I brought up Ryan Herget and said I wanted to circle back on that, you guys have been as good as anyone in the whole country at what Chip likes to call long lining. But long story short, having a lead that came in 6 years ago and converting it, 6 years later. And, what's been the secret with that in terms of building those relationships over the long term? Ryan had, when he came back to Indy, he had given you some leads that you were still converting for, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 years later after the fact. That's with our system. And we have agents all over the country that are focusing on our leads. Some are, some aren't. You guys are at a point now where leads are a part of your program, but I want to talk about what you're doing with past clients and how your business has evolved. But we definitely need to try to dig a little deeper into how you've built those relationships better than maybe anyone else in the country, and had success over the long haul with these folks.
Well, I mean, you really, when you work with somebody and talk to somebody over a long period of time, you naturally build up a relationship with somebody. If you get a lead and you sell them a house the next day and you go through the process, you didn't spend much time driving around with them. You didn't have back and forth conversations. So it's really is more of a transaction. If you talk to somebody and they say, yeah, you know what, we may be buying in a year or 2 or 3. Heck, if they're nice people and they're willing to talk to me and share with me what they're looking for, even if they're not sure what they're doing, I'd rather deal with those. I like dealing with those people, and a lot of them drop off. But the ones that end up coming to town, when you meet them for the first time and you've been talking to somebody for a couple of years, you already know each other. Like they're like, oh yeah, okay, and then you get past that and you go, but you're already familiar with each other. And I had a lot of those from just over years. If somebody's like, I'm not sure what's going on, I'm like, great, no problem. That's what the site's for. Look as long as you want. Whenever you have questions, let me know. I answer them. We move on. Some of those people end up. Some of those people decide not to. But when we had the foreclosures, when the market crashed, I spent a lot of time with a lot of people because, a lot of people wanted to see every house, and there were a lot of them. Or they ended up having to put in a dozen, 15, 20 offers before they got one because it was such a feeding frenzy. Well, you kind of go through battles with people a little bit and you build a relationship that way too. So, I think a lot of people would think I got into the business at the wrong time, but there was a lot of activity. There were a lot of sales. They just weren't a ton of money. And those people have come back and sold and bought again and bought others and referred people. And you spent a lot of time with them. And my background before real estate was account management. It wasn't sales. It was growing business from existing companies in the corporate world. And I like that. I don't love selling. I like building relationships. So that's just the way I chose to do real estate, was that way. Don't have to talk to as many people. You just have to be patient.
Yeah. Well, and you guys have been. Jodi, what do you have to add to that?
I think Eric's right, because actually that I did the same thing. I think we were called sales reps, but I was an account manager. Basically, we had existing business to business clients that I used to work with. And what I learned is when I would tell somebody I would do something and I would do it, just being dependable, being there, answering their questions, being reliable, being consistent. So when I went into that type of job and people hadn't done that before me, I started getting new business because they realized, hey, I can depend on her. So I kind of applied that to real estate where, Eric will give me a hard time because I'll send out so much information. And I'm like, well, I just want to miss anything. I just would rather give them too much. And if they don't want to read it or they don't want to look at it or, I don't know. So that's just the way I do it. We do things a little bit differently, but I think that not being pushy, but somebody knowing that you're going to respond to them and that you're going to build that relationship and you're going to be there when they're ready. One thing Eric always says is, hey, I've been doing real estate for 13 years. I'm still going to be doing real estate in 10 years. So if you're not ready now, I'll still need business in the future. And that kind of calms them down a little bit because I don't know, we have that reputation of being used car salespeople sometimes because some realtors are, and they're so pushy. And if they sign up on a Zillow or whatever, and they've got pushy realtors calling them, and then we call them, they're automatically kind of on guard. So our approach has been a little bit more low key and say, hey, I can set up this search for you. It can run for years. If you're not ready, that's fine. I can check in with you occasionally. And then they kind of take a breath and like, oh, okay. And then they're more relaxed and they're willing to open up a little bit instead of, they think all realtors want to close a deal tomorrow. They'll say, oh, I'm not ready. I'm like, that's fine. You don't have to be ready right now. So I just think it's reassuring them that we are not those, the kind of shark realtors that are out there, and we're here in the long term, we're going to be around, you know, in the future. And that's why we're willing to be patient, I guess.
Yeah, well, it's working.
Well,
Go ahead, Eric.
I was just going to say, you know, as far as like our existing clients and things like that, you had said in your initial question here, what do you do to foster your leads and things like that? So, you know, we were doing, we've done a couple of client appreciation events, like a local, there's a lion habitat here. It's really an amazing thing. We got a discount tickets for that. We paid for it, invited all our clients, you know, had donuts and water and stuff and passed those out. We did a thing in the park, like a potluck in the park. I know there's some other agents around the country, around the different offices that do that too. But I like doing that kind of stuff. Jodi and I combining and doing it now the way she's talking to the initial leads on the phone. I prefer dealing with people in person. So it's worked out really good. We do these client events, do lunch. I'll go take clients to lunch. We take people to dinner. So we do stuff like that to try to build a friendship to some degree.
Yeah, I guess, like Eric says, it's kind of both of us and we have different styles. So I'll do the event planning. He'll do the more spontaneous thing. But then when I'm trying to stay in front of our past clients, I will send them either an email, a text, or a call quarterly to just check in with them and try to give them some kind of helpful information about the tax cap or homestead, or, you know, I don't know. I'm always trying to find new articles. So if anybody has a good way to reach out to a past client or something that they like that they've worked, I'd love to hear it, because I try to do that quarterly. And when you have a lot of clients, it's like, okay, now what am I going to come up with? But I think most people, I mean, some people are like, oh, why are you calling? But most people are really receptive to that. And I've had clients say, you're the best realtor because I don't have anybody I've ever done a transaction with that ever stays in touch like this. But if you don't, they will literally forget you. And then when they're ready to buy or sell, it's not that you didn't do a good job, but they just can't remember, you know, they don't have your car, they don't remember how to get a hold of you, your company. If you stay in front of them, it's a huge deal.
Oh, it's huge. I just saw a statistic. We did an in-house study that showed that it was about 14% of the time people use their agent again. I just saw a statistic a couple of days ago that was 17% of the time. But any way you slice it, that's over 80% of the people that didn't do exactly what you're saying, Jodi, didn't follow up quarterly, didn't follow up maybe ever, just keeping your name in front of them. And so how, you know, do you have a specific plan on that it's at least a quarterly touch?
Yeah.
Or, okay.
Quarterly, I try to reach out to them. I mean, like I said, I have an email that goes out about, after about a week, I send the email about the homestead, because they'll get those little cards and they don't know what they are. And I'll talk about, you know, you can do it yourself. You don't have to pay. Here's the site. If you need the information, contact me. I'll help you fill it out. And then I have one that talks about here, you have to, I don't know how it is in other states, but you have to, they'll send out a thing from the assessor's office to make sure that your cap on your taxes is correct. Like if you're an investor, it's higher. If you're an owner occupied, so you want to make sure that that's correct. So things like that. But sometimes I'll just call them and say, hey, you know, just calling to say hi, what's new, or, you know. So it's kind of a mix of everything. I just try to alternate it so it's not always the same thing.
This is a good time for me to plug what Chris had sent out maybe a few weeks ago about the monthly market update. And right now you have to manually set that up so that your past clients are receiving basically a tailored update to the home they bought in the community they bought it in. But that will be automated in phase 2 of this rollout. So look forward to that. I'm sure it'll have a more powerful leverage when it's probably automated. So, you know, as your business has evolved here, and Jodi, you talked a little bit about working with a listing, but are you guys breaking up listings versus buyers? Maybe talk a little bit about how you guys have recently changed, you know, the methodology of how you're going to work together as a team.
I think what we decided was that I would take the leads, screen the leads, set up the searches, follow up with people until they're like maybe a week or so out from coming, and then kind of pass them off to Eric. And then one thing that would be great on the IMS for us, I'm sure it doesn't apply to anybody else unless they're a team like this, but to be able to, both of us have the same lead in our database because we have to transfer it back and forth. So we do that. But I like listings. I didn't do listings for the first year because I was afraid. And then I started doing them and I'm like, I really enjoy listings. So I like doing the marketing. I like to be creative with the different social media, with doing videos and using Canva and some different tools. So Eric's done a lot of listings, but he doesn't love them as much as I do. So I said, well, I'll do the listings, you know, you do the buyers, and then we split our business, like the showings versus taking leads kind of thing. So that's kind of how we set it up, and it just kind of fell into place that way.
Well, you really touched on something there that's so important, and where so many real estate agents stumble is that they are afraid of something and never get over the hump on it. And thank you for being honest and saying, you know, hey, I didn't do it because I was afraid. So there's other agents on this call right now that are afraid about something they're not doing, whether it's social media, listings, market, whatever it is, I don't know. What were you afraid of with the listings, and how did you overcome that?
I just didn't know how to do them. So I didn't want to go to the first one. It's like your first buyer, and you feel like you don't know what you're doing. But like I said, Eric's been the person that I always lean on, and he's provided the best information. And then I just kind of, you know, took classes and things about it, continuing ed, but I didn't want to do social media. I'm not a social media person in my personal life. So I've had to force myself to do social media, but it's really important to your listings, I think. I've had to do videos, don't love doing videos. So all these things I don't love doing, but I think they're really necessary for where our industry is headed. So I've kind of made myself do it. Like my next goal is to do a video that I put on my introductory email. So when it goes out, that's on there. I think it's a good thing. I just haven't had a chance to do it, but all these little things, I mean, I've looked into sign writers and figured that out. And so it's just a lot of research. And so if you're not a research person, then it's kind of a struggle. But if you have somebody to bounce questions off, like if anybody on this call ever wants to ask me about sign writers, or I'm not a social media expert by any means, but like I could tell you what I do for my listings on social media, and the different sites that I use for it. I'd be happy to share that with you.
Thank you. Yeah, Eric, what about for you? How what are some things you've built up over time that you're more stronger now than you were before? Or how's the relationship that, breaking up the system with Jodi has maybe freed you up to do what you love?
That's really it. I mean, we have definitely, different ways of doing the same job, and they just happen to complement each other, which I think we kind of lucked into that. Most of the listings that I think I've gotten one or two listings in the whole time I've been doing this. One came off of a Zillow profile, one came off of some other social media site that I didn't even know I had a profile on. Other than that, my listings have come from my past clients or referrals, and that goes back to the relationships and building that up when you're working with them on the buy side. So that's why it's not only are you going to get referrals if you do a good job with your clients and build a relationship, but you're going to get repeat business from them. And so, I had before this morning, I had a meeting, and she's like, we're going with you, when I walked in the door. Like, it wasn't even I didn't have to go through, I had a listing presentation, didn't need it, because they've referred me to other people. They've bought from me. So Jodi has researched, building up a listing presentation and really having information that you need to justify why they should use you. And so we've got that aspect too, as we expand, if we do expand into more listings. But, we're probably going to do, I don't know, somewhere between 6 and 10 listings this year. And it's not prospecting for them. It's just
right.
And, you get 10 of those on top of 2 people's buyers activity, and we're going to do a pretty good amount of business. And so we're good with that.
I think what I like about the listings is it's the challenge. Like he said, we get a lot of referrals, but we've also gone on a couple appointments where we didn't know these people. One of them, I'm trying to remember, I think they found us on Referral Exchange, and we were competing with 3 agents, and this guy happened to love or be friends with Warren Buffett, whatever. So he kind of leaned toward that company, but he said, you know what, if I didn't, I would have chosen you guys. So we went in there cold and did our presentation, but I think it's fun to try to get in there and get the business. I mean, we don't always get it, obviously, but it's a nice challenge. But the more I've done it, the more I've learned that you need to have different tools. Like this agent had a pre-listing presentation. We didn't have it. And after that, I put one together because I'm like, we need to have this to compete. So I just
Yeah.
kind of learn from other people, what other people have, and then I steal the idea and do it myself.
A week ago today on this time slot, Brandon Jackson, who runs our Charlotte division, he presented his pre-listing packet. And Jodi, I know you guys put one together too. Have you used that yet so far, and how's it helped?
We have. I send it out when I'm talking to somebody before the appointment. They don't always look at it, but if they do, for example, we just got a listing, the one that got multiple offers off of a website called Rate My Agent. So I'm fanatical about getting reviews from our clients. I will hound them until they do it because they're important to us. And I tell them, this is how we build our business. We're a referral base. So the Rate My Agent, you put your referrals on there, and this guy found us from Nebraska. Didn't talk to Eric. It was just a coincidence. He was from there. I spoke to him. He was out-of-state investor wanting to sell his property. So that's kind of how we did it, or how we got him. But I sent him the listing presentation so that when I met him, when he flew out, he'd already reviewed it. It kind of just gives an overview of why we're different from other agents, what we offer, talks about Easy Street in our website, because nobody else can really offer that, the number of hits that you're going to get on your listing, and you know, promoting it to people use, you know, when you use it for a buyer lead, you know, and use our listings, and then everybody else is seeing that. So I think that either, it just depends on the person. Either they're going to look at it or they're not. If they do, it's a good preview, and I think it's a really strong presentation. If they don't, then I go through it with them at the meeting, and then our meeting is after that about commission net sheets. If they look at it before, all I have to discuss is commission and net sheets. They're already on board when most of the time when they've seen that. So
yeah,
you can use it two ways. It just depends on the person, I think.
I think you know, for many people, often it would work very well, the pre-listing packet. And I'm glad we got some people out there giving that a shot. It's been working pretty well. You talked about in your packet about why what separates you. And that's been kind of a running theme with these agent spotlight series we've been doing here, is the agents knowing their value. And I think as newer agents, or agents that are hope to aspire to be at the level you guys are at, that's where they're kind of finding their way. So when you talk to someone that's living in New York and they're thinking about retiring to Vegas or California and maybe buying a second home in Vegas, whatever the situation is, why Eric and Jodi?
I think the first thing we say is we're a team. So you have two people available to you. You know, if Eric's busy, I can back him up, and vice versa. So, I mean, we try to structure it so it's the way we have it, but it's not always going to work. So if we have clients in town, both of us have clients in town, then, you know, we both have to do that. But I think for like my listings, I've said, hey, if I'm unavailable to assist with something, then Eric's around. So that's one strength. And the other thing is, like I said, the technology and the social media, we really stress. I do, because at the sign writers, you have people driving around, they can text or use a QR code and get all the information off the MLS. It's the same. Or I mean, I'm trying to post it on every site I can think of. LinkedIn, Google My Business. Google My Business is something that everybody should have if they don't have it now. Setting that up, and then the regular social.
Tell us about that a little bit. A lot of people probably not even heard of that.
Okay, I'm not the expert on this, but basically it's on the email. It's on our Gmail, and if you just click on it, I think it's on the little where it's like a square of 9 buttons. Google My Business is like a storefront for you. So you can put your hours, you can post in there, you can do ads. So I treat it just like my other social media. When I do one social media, I do it on LinkedIn, Google My Business, Facebook, and Instagram. I try to hit all of those. And so it's just another way to get out there to the general public. So when people are Googling you, you want as many different things to come up about you as possible. You want them to see you on, you know, Zillow reviews, you want Rate My Agent, you want Google My Business, LinkedIn. So it's just another way to get out there to the public. And I mean, you could do videos, you could put anything on there. And it's, I've had people come off of that and go onto the Easy Street site when I'm trying to figure out where the lead came from, you know, that they clicked on that. So I just think it's another tool to either advertise your listings, get new customers, you know, that's what I use it for.
Okay. Eric, on your guys' value proposition, what do you have to add there?
I just just try to explain to folks that I've been doing this a while. So I have experience that's really, really important. And you said it earlier, Vegas is a volatile market. We can swing on a dime. And, I just talk to people about, look, I've been through crashes. I've been through ups and downs. I've been through low inventory, high inventory. So whatever situation we're going to come up against, I've been through it. Not everybody can say that. And it's just about being, like Jodi said, reliable and responsive. Before Jodi got into the business, I'd catch a little bit of heck from her answering my phone at 8 o'clock at night or responding to a text at 10 o'clock at night. But I'm like, look, I'm just sitting here. I'm not doing anything. It's no, and sometimes you go back and forth between setting boundaries with your clients and not, and I probably err to the not. I just pretty much, I'm like, look, you're not going to get this kind of customer service from anybody else. That's my background, is customer service and account management. And I've always just set yourself apart. And that's, I think, one way you can really do it. There's a lot of great agents out there, but they might be more rigid. They might, luckily Jodi and I don't have little kids. So I if I'm not working, I'm not doing much. So, I might as well make it an advantage. And I think it does, for the right people, it makes a big difference.
Yeah, I think, you can, like Eric says, he's more open, and I tend to set boundaries a little bit more, but I'm very clear about, hey, I'll get back to you. This is when I'll get back to you. I don't leave people hanging.
Yeah,
and I actually went to a CE class, and the instructor asked who takes people out without a buyer broker. And all these people from Berkshire Hathaway or whatever the big companies were like, no, we don't ever do that. And I said, I do that because I'm getting your business. I'm getting your clients that don't want to do that. And want a little flexibility. And Eric's always said, from the minute I started working with him, it's better to get out there and meet them the first time so that they can feel comfortable. Why do they want to sign this agreement when they don't even know you?
Right.
If you end up wanting to do a buyer broker, that's fine. And I'm not saying you should or shouldn't, but we just don't really force people into that situation. We tell them you can work with us because you want to. If I have a listing agreement, and I tell them when I'm taking the listing agreement, if for any reason you want to cancel this, I'll let you out of it. I'm not going to hold you to it, because I don't want that in my reputation. I want to be flexible. If there, for some reason we can't agree, we'll let you out. So I think that a lot of agents are so rigid. We won't take you out without a pre-approval. We won't take you out with a buyer broker. And maybe in some markets that works, or for some agents it does. For us, we've just been able to get other clients from not doing that. And then, we don't even ever need it. I have to say there's been a few that have worked with multiple agents. There's just people out there that do that. But the amount of people that I've gained versus the amount we've lost, I think is higher by being a little bit more flexible. And we also tell them about our almost 100 5-star reviews that we have. Hey, if you don't believe what I'm saying, go online. Here, I'll send you a link. You can see what all these other people said about how we run our business. It's a referral-based business. We need reviews. So we ask people to review us, and this is what they said.
So you're the 100 5-star reviews, that's on Zillow?
Yeah, between the two of us, it's close to,
Right.
I don't know how many Eric has. I have about 45.
That's awesome. So what are you guys doing because I think that's another place where many agents don't put the time and effort into building that credibility of their brand, the online testimonial that people can, it's a third party essentially. And so what are you guys doing to make sure people go to Zillow and do that?
I tell them before they close, I'm going to send you a review. Would you do it? If I forget to do that, I try to email it to them and say, hey, will you mind doing so? But I always make sure either right before it closes or right after it closes. And I say, I know you're busy with moving in, but when you get a chance, and then if they wait a week and they don't do it, I'll call them up and go, hey, I really would appreciate it if you do it. So I just kind of bug them. Some people just won't do it because with Zillow, it's kind of a pain. You have to set up an account, and some people don't want to do that. If they're like that, I'll send them a different site. There's, Rate My Agent's another one where they don't have to have an account. So here, I'll send you an easier one. Can you do this one? So sometimes that works better, but.
Eric, are you doing the same thing?
Yeah, I just do Zillow just because I don't want to water down my reviews to a bunch of different sites. But I know with Rate My Agent, you can actually copy and paste them over from other site. I need to do that. We talk to people, when we're talking to people on a first call, on a second call, we mention it, like, look, in my signature, there's a link to my profile on Zillow with all my reviews. If you have any, you know, you're probably talking to other, I assume they're talking to other agents. I'm like, you're probably talking to other agents, you know, take a look at mine and see what my clients think, past clients think. And then I just kind of move on to the other things. I don't know, honestly, how many people look at it, but I think just mentioning it to them, you know, I've been doing this.
They're
a long
looking
time.
at it.
Yeah, they do. I've had people tell me they looked at it. And I think
Yeah.
if you don't have that in your signature, or you haven't built up your reviews, that's the first thing you should do if you're a new agent. Start building up your reviews from day one and start putting it in your signature, because people are online doing Yelp and doing all this stuff and they will look at them.
That's great piece of strategic advice right there, guys. Thank you for that. If anyone has any questions for Eric and Jodi, don't be afraid to jump in right now. And Brett, you have a question?
I just have a comment, and
okay, go for it.
I've worked with Eric for over 10 years, and one of the things that people can learn from him is he just doesn't give up on somebody. There's a lot of agents, when you take a client out 2 or 3 times and they don't buy, you give up. And that's something you guys should learn, that I've never seen anyone just roll with the punches as well as Eric does. And he gets a lot of extra sales from just staying with those folks. And, you know, that's very important. And I think a lot of people don't realize. I've seen people take people out twice and then remove the lead from their system. They don't want to deal with them anymore. Someone else gets them and sells them a house. You know, it's kind of Eric just stays with them. And then the other thing is you guys that are generating your own leads, taking company leads, it's after so many years of doing it, your business is based on those people giving you referrals. And Eric has known that. And Jodi now is getting into it. She's been in the business 4 or 5 years now. Is that right, Jodi? 5 years?
Yeah, I think this is my.
So she's going to be seeing a lot more repeat people helping her business out, but they are still generating the leads from the company, from other sources, just to have the pipeline for the future. And I think that's another thing agents should learn, just to go from there. That's it. Eric's been doing this for over 10 years. I've been with him, and it's been great. So that's all I want to say.
Well, the persistence too, and I think, Jodi, the persistence with you going back to the testimonials and the Zillow reviews. I've talked to a lot of people that we'll be talking about getting those testimonials and making sure their Zillow profile looks solid, and they will say, well, I tried, but they didn't do it. Well, you're going back a second time, maybe a third time. You're being persistent. It's worth it, because they are looking you up. And I love the idea of if it's Zillow's too hard, go to Rate My Agent, and then, you know, it sounds like you can migrate that over. That's great.
The other thing you can do is ask them for a video testimonial, and I've done that too. And then you can put that on your social media.
Yeah.
1 minute, like you just tell them, I'm going to come to your house. I'd love to see your house since you moved in. Let me just do a 1 minute video. It's very casual. The only question is going to be, how was your experience with me? And then they just start talking. I mean, sometimes I have to cut them off because it's just a minute for Instagram. So that's a great thing. People look at videos. So it's a great tool to have if they don't want to do the Zillow, or maybe you just want to get some more video reviews for your social media.
Yeah. Well, if anyone else has any more questions, you know, like I said, jump on in. You can put something in the text chat regardless. But you had talked a little bit ago about the buyer broker form and how basically telling those agents, hey, if, you know, I'll just take those clients because, you know, they don't want to sign this, and good for us, which leads me to a couple questions I've been asking everyone on these in this interview series. And that is, what was the best agent you ever did a cross deal with, and why? And what was the worst? And I think that's really important questions to ask, because I think for a lot of the people in the audience, it's good to hear why the agent was so great. And it's maybe even better to hear what made the agent so bad. And so, you know, anybody come to mind for either of you for a really good agent you did a deal with and a really bad one?
I can think of several bad ones, but the worst one was an agent who was a property manager and really didn't know the other side of the business. And she was so nasty and so difficult. Brett ended up having to deal with her because I just couldn't deal with her anymore. And she was nasty to Brett. But the thing that made me sad was that her clients, she's a property manager. So she thought that we had to steam clean the carpets. It's broom swept here. So she insisted that they weren't going to close, that she was going to withhold that unless they did that. We hired a carpet cleaning company. Then she said, nope, there weren't lines in the carpet. Well, the people had to come back and get something, like, sorry. So, I mean, she made us do it again. It was ridiculous. So we did it again. sellers came by to make sure it was right. The buyers happened to stop by, and they told the sellers that they were so worried they were going to lose this deal because of their agent, because she was so difficult and asking things that they didn't even ask for. It was just her asking for stuff, and she wasn't even running it by her clients. And I almost sent a letter because, I mean, they're just unethical, not representing your clients, where they're so upset that they think they're not going to get what they want because you're asking for stuff they're not asking for. It was crazy.
Yeah, there's some bad ones out there.
Yeah,
Eric,
and on the flip side, the good one is one I'm working with right now on our multiple offer. I mean, she was on it, sent everything as soon as she said, communicates all the time, lets me know when they waive their appraisal, but then they were going to do it anyway. And just very communicative. And then also I noticed she really looks out for her client. She was concerned because the tax cap was at an investor rate and her client's an occupied owner. So, brought up something that I didn't know. How do we adjust this? Is this client stuck with the old tax cap because they're closing after July 1st when our taxes change, and when they're appealed, you have to do it before that time. So, I mean, I just feel like that's a client that's really, or an agent really looking out for their client, really taking the extra time to do what she needs to do to make sure they're completely covered. And I learned something from her.
That's excellent. Eric.
I mean, I've done a lot of transactions with great agents. It's sad that the good ones don't really stand out. I was looking at the questions when you sent them over, and I'm like, I just didn't have the time to dig into it to really answer that. But yeah, the bad ones definitely stand out. One guy a while back, early on when market was starting to heat back up, a buddy of mine's house, we had it on the market and we had multiple offers, and they did an addendum guaranteeing over appraisal. And when the appraisal came in and was low, he said, "We're canceling." And I said, "Why are you canceling?" And he goes, "Because the appraisal didn't come in." I go, "But your buyer signed this thing guaranteeing the purchase price." He goes, "Well, that's optional." I'm like, "It's a legal document. It's part of the contract. It's not optional." But buyers have so many different ways they can get out of things with HOA document package and all that kind of stuff that we talked to Brett, made the call. Just, it's not worth fighting. But I mean, I have that guy. I have a sticky note. It's probably been 7-8 years. I have a sticky note with that guy's name on it.
Really?
I hope someday he puts an offer in.
Robin Brees, our director of marketing, just put a video out talking about how the hidden or the underappreciated part of being in real estate is having the reputation with other real estate agents that they want to work with you.
Yeah.
Or avoiding the reputation of being on a sticky note for 8 years and absolutely do not do a deal with this.
I mean, I'm not that kind of person usually, but I just shook my head when I was talking to him. I was like, how do you mean this is optional? This is a contract. Like, to this day, it baffles me. So, I mean, when I see certain agents that on a listing and I've had a good transaction with them, I'll mention to my client, I'm like, "Look, I've worked with this agent before. They're really good. They're not messing with us." So I mean, there's definitely agents out there that are like that. They don't come to mind off the top of my head.
Okay, that's all right.
The other
Chip?
thing is sorry, I was just going to say that about 10% of the agents do 80% of the business. So no matter how big your market is, you run into these people again over and over. So you don't want to have a bad relationship if you're a busy agent.
Absolutely. Chip, did you have something?
I'd like to ask both of them a question, if it's okay. I wanted to wait till everybody's punched out.
Go for it.
Start with Jodi. Jodi, what I find is particularly powerful about how you approach the business and my working with you in here and how you guys are doing things is you have already considered the options before the problem happened. So you said before that you think the people that are brand new to the business should be most concerned about is building referrals, particularly online in the reviews that they're putting up. Let me ask you a question. If you had to go back and do it again, starting right now, what would you specifically do to both, number one, build referrals, and number two, to get them to, what would you do differently from the very outset? Because you'd be starting without that experience.
So how do you start when you don't have any clients?
Yep. Yeah, if you're starting from scratch, knowing what you know now about what you should be doing in that first year or 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. So give it up.
I probably didn't do the reviews like I should have the first year. I mean, I did start to see personal referrals, I would say, into my second year from clients the year before, whether it was them or referring somebody that they knew. but I would have started with my first transaction and made sure that I always tell people I'm going to ask you for a referral. And, you know, you can tell them that at title when you're signing, you can tell them at the walkthrough, whatever. But I just would always, I would have started that earlier. And if I didn't have anything to review, maybe get a letter of recommendation from somebody you worked for before and put that out there, or put it in your, I don't know, in your pre-list. If you're doing a listing, put it in that. If you're with a buyer, put it in your buyer presentation. Get some recommendations from people that you've worked for or with in your prior business, because everybody's done something. So somebody's going to be able to recommend you, even if it's not as an agent. So just because you're a new agent doesn't mean that you know, can't work as your hardest. I mean, that's your goal, is to learn as much as you can from every transaction, because I'm still learning from every transaction, and to just work as hard as you can for your clients, and then everything else will come.
Yeah, but I think you really stand. You and Eric both have one very unique quality, I think, in real estate, and that is you really are your brand. I mean, it's not BS. As a matter of fact, if it even smells like BS, you're stripping it away rather than let it stay there. And that's the integrity that I think builds the best kind of brands. I think you do too. Well done. Eric is looks California, but he's from Nebraska. So he's got the have your cake, eat it too of the West Coast. And what's cool about Eric is that he looks like the kind of person that's snobby. But in reality, he is so better than neighbor next door. And here's the question, Eric. So you've been doing this for blank years. How many years now? 13, including the new home stuff?
Yeah, 13.
Yeah. All right. So Eric, what do you know right now that if you went back and told the person 13 years ago, and I know it's a cliche question,
Say that again.
people answered, what would you tell your 13 years ago self right now they need to do differently in the first 4 years of their business so that they get where you are now a lot faster?
I don't know if it'd be the first day, but as social media has become a bigger part of this, get on it then versus now. I feel like I mean, there's still a lot of agents that haven't got on the social media bandwagon, and I'm still fighting it. I wish I would have done that from the time that stuff started. Then it wouldn't be a new thing. And I didn't jump off on review. I mean, I really didn't do the first couple of years much with my reviews. I did a lot of contact and I was always building the relationship. So I think I did get a good share of my reviews, but I didn't do enough with that initially. You know, you're going back in year 3 and 4 going, hey, I know it's been a while, but could you do a review for me from 4 years ago? And I got a few people that did it. But I mean, I have close to 70 now. I would be well over 100 if I would have been better at it from the start.
That's so interesting, you know, because that is not the answer that we would have given 3 years ago or 4 years. Maybe you would have. I think Jodi might have. She was thinking this way. But I tell you right now, 4 years ago, I wouldn't go back and say this. It has really changed. I didn't just say 4 years ago wasn't important. I'm saying the people that have been doing it for the last 4 years are killing it right now because they have, 500 reviews. And when you have 500 reviews, it overwhelms the reader. They're not going to go back and read 500. Just the sheer volume of Jodi getting to say 100 positive reviews versus 100 reviews is really a powerful tool. That is your brand. Yeah.
I would have tried to work on my brand in all aspects a lot earlier. That's definitely something that I would tell myself. Like you're what people are signing up for. So you got to build that. And we've some of the CE classes and different things I've gone to have just talked about. This is a business where you're trying to earn people's trust, and so anything that you can do to get people to trust you. So that's why I'm patient with people. That's why I'm not pushy with people. That's why I talk about experience and the ups and downs of the market, and I've been through all of that before. It's all to get people to understand and that you're looking out for their best interest, and you've seen it all before, and that you can handle it, and you'll help them and get them to trust you.
Okay, now you definitely have the worst customer of all time in that you got drug into the cat urine case. that customer.
Sure.
Not that that customer was the worst, but it was among the worst, most harrowing long-term stories I ever saw an agent. Or, by the way, Stephen, Chris, and Brian, as owners, have to get drugged through, both monetarily, emotionally. It's like you didn't do something wrong. If you real quick, what is the craziest thing you've seen in real estate in 13 years?
I mean, that was up there. I mean, my friend Justin, Brett will know because I was in talking to him. He bought a house and he was selling it, and the lady that was buying it, her deceased husband had been a real estate attorney in Hawaii, and I mean, she bypassed her agent from day one and would send me these emails about threatening to sue and not going to show up, and she was playing games about, I'm not showing up to closing if you guys don't do this. And then I had the title company was the title company I picked, and I said, oh well, she said she's not signing if we don't do this. She goes, well, she's scheduling an appointment tomorrow. So she was telling us that she wasn't going to show up so that we wouldn't show up, so that she could show up and then go, see, they're not fulfilling their part of the contract. I mean, she was playing every game. I'd wake up in the morning to an email, and I just kept forwarding the emails back to her agent going, I'm not responding to your client. She needs to go through you. It was just ugly. I don't know what her deal was, but yeah, I mean, there's been a few of those. The lady that moved back to Indianapolis, that was a referral from one of the Indy agents.
Oh,
She left her house and handed me the keys, and I walked in, and by the time we got the dumpster hired and the trash out people to come, I mean, it was 3 full dumpsters full of stuff. Then there was more cat urine in that house. I mean, I had no idea. When I showed up for the listing appointment, it was a mess. She goes, my daughter's coming. We'll have everything clean. We'll have everything all moved out of here. I've got somebody coming. When I showed up that day, she handed me the keys. She goes, that dumpster will be here later today. I've got guys coming to unload. It was just, I didn't know what to do, but we got it done. So it's been a couple.
I'm proud of both of you guys. You're a great team. We're blessed to have you. Great job.
Thank you.
Can I say one more thing? Sorry, it just made me think.
Please.
When you ask about new agents, one thing to do is build your network of people that can help your clients. Eric's mentioned the cat urine story twice. He just had a deal where there was smoke in the garage. I just had a deal where there was cat urine in the garage. So we have a guy that does like an ozone cleaning that, can get rid of that for the sellers or the buyers, whoever. But build your network. I mean, I've had mold issues. I've had to find mold people. So build your network of people to make your transaction smooth for your clients so that they're not out there stressed out already with what's going on. And now they've got to hire somebody that they don't know is going to do a good job. I mean, I have a list of people that I can refer if they need anything. So make yourself the contact point for your clients for any referrals or anything that they might need during the transaction. So that's important.
Or after.
That's great. Before we jump to Chris, the one thing I want to make sure people understand about the craziness of the cat urine story is that the client sued for the smell of cat urine, but it wasn't the house they bought. It was the house next door to the house they bought.
Yep.
Now that's crazy.
Yeah.
Chris, did you want to say something? No. Okay. I thought you had turned your video on. I thought maybe you wanted to ask a question or.
Hi, Chris.
No.
Okay. All right.
Well, I mean, I will take this opportunity just to thank Eric and Jodi for doing this today. I mean, obviously, for 13 years, ever since we've known you guys, you've been nothing but helpful for us, helping us build that company out there. And I mean, Jodi still sends out a similar report every single week to every agent. She compiles, a list of the specs and builder information, and you guys just go above and beyond, and we certainly appreciate having you, and thank you for everything.
Oh, thank you for.
You guys have always treated us really well too, so we're happy to do what we can.
Well,
We're very supported.
I could keep asking the rest of the questions I sent you guys over, but you've been so generous with your time already. I know you guys are busy and have to get out of town. So thank you so much for coming on. It's been awesome. I hope everybody enjoyed it. And the recording will be available for people that haven't had a chance to be here today or, maybe had to leave a little early, but that's it, guys. Thank you so much for coming on, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye, guys.